Conservative new media viewers, Jeremy Lin fans around the world, Charlotte Hornets fans around the world. What's up? It's me, PFE, Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. We're here to discuss several things. That's why I'm calling this an update rather than a game video. We'll talk quickly about game number 82, which the Hornets and J-Lin won over the Orlando Magic last night. Also want to discuss the pending Charlotte versus Miami playoff series. Finally, we want to talk about reports coming out that Mike D'Antoni, who of course was Jeremy's head coach in New York with the Knicks, could end up becoming the head coach of Philadelphia or several other teams. And we kind of tilted our hat or tipped our hat to that idea on Twitter recently when we told people, pay attention to what's going on in Philadelphia. So let's talk about those three things. First of all, the game last night. I didn't get to make the video last night. I'm just too tired, and I was waiting for the playoff schedule to come out so I could talk about the games that were to come rather than last night's game, which was relatively meaningless. The Hornets did win. They had a huge lead early on. Jeremy started the game because Nick Batum was missing in action with an injured ankle that he was resting. And Jeremy played well. The team played well. They let the Magic come back in the second half. It almost looked like they didn't care if they won or not, but they ended up prevailing in the end, mostly with bench players out there getting the job done, and congratulations to them. Now let's talk about the Miami Heat and Charlotte in this matchup. So what happened was 4 teams, including the Hornets, finished with the exact same record. I believe that record was 48-34. Miami 48-34, Atlanta 48-34, Boston 48-34, and Charlotte 48-34. Unfortunately for the Hornets, they lost the tiebreaker. They are the 4th among 4 teams in terms of the tiebreaker, so they got the number 6 seed. Miami got the number 3 seed. Atlanta is 4. Boston is number 5. However, a lot of Hornets fans and Jeremy Lin fans seemed happy about it, and that's because they think that should the team advance beyond the first round, they would avoid having to potentially play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and rather than facing the Cavaliers, if the top seeds won, then Charlotte would end up playing Toronto rather than Cleveland. And I guess some people feel like Miami might be a better matchup for the Hornets. Now, I went back and I looked over the 4 meetings between the 2 teams this year, and the season series was 2-2. So Miami won 2 games and Charlotte won 2 games. And interestingly, in the last 2 meetings between the teams, the road team won each game by 3 points. So in the 3rd game of the season, Miami came to Charlotte. They won by 3 points. And in the 4th meeting of the season, Charlotte went to Miami, and they won by 3 points in Miami. When you break down the statistics of the 2 teams, you notice that they have almost the exact same defensive efficiency. So they're both good defensive teams. I think they both finished in the top 10 or certainly like the top 12 or so. But Charlotte is slightly stronger on offense. Now, I think Miami is going to be favored in the series because they have home court advantage. So if the series goes 7 games, 4 games will be played in Miami, whereas 3 games will be played in Charlotte. And they have more experience. They have a playoff-tested coach. They have championship-level players, guys like Dwayne Wade, who are still there, even people like Udonis Haslem, who's less of a factor on the court these days, but they have leadership and championship pedigree. Whereas Charlotte is a younger team. They're a team that's just kind of come together, okay? One of the things that's going to be absolutely critical in this series will be 3-point shooting. And that's because Charlotte likes to shoot 3-pointers, and they're good at making 3-pointers in games, and Miami's almost the exact opposite of that. So Charlotte's near the top of the league in 3-pointers attempted per game, 3-pointers made per game, Miami is almost at the bottom of the league in those two categories. So if Charlotte's hitting its 3-point shots in this series, I think they're going to have an excellent chance to win. However, Miami is very good at defending against a 3-point shot. They're, I think, number 12 in 3-point percentage against, meaning they hold their opponents to the 12th best 3-point percentage in the league against them. So Charlotte, in one of the statistical rankings known as SRS, which is Simple Rating System, Charlotte is actually higher than Miami. So what I'm telling you then with all of this information is that Charlotte is not outmatched here, at least not from a statistical perspective or on paper. But they do have to overcome the inexperience, and they do have to overcome not having home court. They have to win at least one game in Miami to be able to win this series. Usually I have a pretty strong opinion about series and about games. I really don't have a strong opinion about this series. I don't have a feel for it. So it's hard for me to make a prediction. I do like Charlotte's chances in this series, though. I think they've got a real good chance. Another thing that's going to be important in this series, and this particularly affects Jeremy, is the center for Miami, one of their centers, Hassan Whiteside, is one of the best shot blockers in the league, if not the best shot blocker. If you remember the games this year, particularly the last couple games, I think, one of them, I want to say the game that was in Charlotte, so maybe the third game of the season, Jeremy kept driving into the lane against Whiteside, and he kept getting his shot blocked to the point where Steve Clifford wasn't happy about it. I think Steve Clifford said something that wasn't just Jeremy. There was a couple other players on the Hornets as well. But I think Steve Clifford said after the game that the team wasn't prepared for what they needed to do, or something along those lines. And what he meant was, you can't try to drive against Hassan Whiteside. That's basically what his point was, and what he was his criticism of his own team. So what that means for Jeremy, and Jeremy in the last two meetings with the Heat has only played about 17 minutes per game and only averaged about 6 points per game. So he hasn't played that great in the last couple of meetings with them. He did play well against them in the first game of the season. Since then, it's been not so great. He's going to have to hit outside shots, at least when Hassan Whiteside's in the game, because it's just very difficult to drive against him and do much, because he pretty much controls the lane and shuts down layups and so forth. Or if you're going to drive, you're going to have to use your floater and get something that goes up and over the top of the arms of Hassan Whiteside. You can't shoot regular layups because it's just not going to work. So that's something to watch with Jeremy specifically, and also somebody like Kemba, who of course likes getting to the basket as well. So I'm excited about this. I really do think Charlotte has a chance in this series. And look, they could, Toronto, if they did say they advanced and they ended up playing Toronto's playing Indiana in the first round. Charlotte's good enough to compete with just about any team in the league. Say maybe not the very top teams like Golden State or the Spurs, although they beat the Spurs. They can compete with almost any team in the league when they're playing their game. That means they've got to play defense, they've got to move the ball, they've got to hit three-pointers, they've got to keep the turnovers low. But when they play their best, they can handle almost anybody. And their best is good enough to compete with Miami, certainly. So let's just focus on that. We'll just focus on this series. Also, I should say we have the schedule for the first round of the playoffs. So that's what I was waiting for last night. When are these games going to actually take place? If you go to NBA.com, they have the schedule there. I'm sure they have it on like NBA section of ESPN. But in the United States, the first game will be this upcoming Sunday, April 17th. So that's game number 1 on Sunday, April 17th. Game number 2 in the United States, Wednesday, April 20th. Game number 3 on Saturday, April 23rd. And then game number 4 will be on Monday, April 25th. So Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Monday. Now, of course, there might be more games in the series, provided that it's not a sweep. We would expect it probably won't be a sweep. We'll just have to stay tuned for that. But here in the United States, first game will take place this upcoming Sunday, which means that it will take place early on Monday. I think the game is at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States, which means it will take place at, I think, 5:30. I can't remember if it's 5:30 or 6:30 with the time difference right now in China and also in Taiwan. So that's the schedule. That's what's going on with that. Again, I definitely give the Hornets a real chance here. I don't feel like I can make a prediction, though. I need to see more of what happens in the games. Now let's talk about Mike D'Antoni. So what I said recently on Twitter was to keep your eyes on the situation in Philadelphia. And that was because former general manager Sam Hinkie stepped down. He basically resigned as general manager. The reason why that took place, or what it seems to be the reason, was because Jerry Colangelo, who I think was serving as an advisor to the 76ers, and I think he has since renounced that position. Apparently, Jerry Colangelo was kind of pushing Sam Hinkie to the side, kind of minimizing his power and ability within the organization. What's ended up happening since then is that Jerry Colangelo's son, Brian Colangelo, has been hired on by the Sixers. I don't know what his official title is, but I think he'll be serving as part of his duties will be as general manager, meaning player acquisition and kind of the basketball side of running the team, or at least partly. So, Brian Colangelo in, Sam Hinkie out. Why is that important? Because both Colangelos, Jerry and Brian, were the management and ownership team in place, I believe, for the Phoenix Suns when they hired Mike D'Antoni. So Brian Colangelo, I believe, was the person who directly hired Mike D'Antoni in Phoenix, and that began the Mike D'Antoni, Steve Nash 7 seconds or less offensive system that has now kind of become the en vogue thing throughout the league. Golden State is running a version of it. Other teams want to run versions of it and so forth. And, of course, Mike D'Antoni is an assistant coach with the Philadelphia 76ers. So now the reports are coming out that maybe Mike D'Antoni could be made the Philadelphia head coach. And that would mean that the current head coach, Brett Brown, who was hired by Sam Hinkie, I believe, would then be replaced or fired or whatnot, and then Mike D'Antoni is installed. If you know much, I mean, in any workplace, this happens all the time. The new ownership comes in, new management comes in, and they want to hire their guys. And they're not as tied to the old guys. So if Brett Brown is a Sam Hinkie guy, then you could see if the Colangelos or Brian Colangelo wanted to put in his own guy, meaning somebody like Mike D'Antoni, who he has a relationship with and he's comfortable with. Now, there's a couple different reports that are out there right now. One of them says that, well, we think it's going to happen, but it might not happen at the start of next year. In other words, maybe Brett Brown begins the year and then Mike D'Antoni replaces him during the year. There's also another report that says Mike D'Antoni might get interest from the Brooklyn Nets, who apparently were seeking a head coach. They fired their permanent head coach during the season, Lionel Hollins, and they replaced him with, I believe, Tony Brown, who I think is an interim head coach, and also the Washington Wizards, who just fired Randy Whitman. Now, obviously, if any of those three things happen, that could affect Jeremy. The one situation where it might have the least effect on Jeremy Lin is if Mike D'Antoni went to Washington, because they already have John Wall as their starting point guard, and I can't remember right now who their backup is. Actually, it's Ramon Sessions. I don't know if Ramon's going to be a free agent this year or not. So, yeah, sure. Jeremy could end up going to Washington and decide to be the backup to John Wall. Is that his ideal situation? No, I don't think it is. But one of these reports about Mike D'Antoni also mentions that if Philadelphia feels, if they believe that the Wizards or the Nets might hire Mike D'Antoni, then they, the Sixers, might make him the head coach so they don't lose him. Okay? So in that situation, D'Antoni doesn't even need to go to Washington. It just becomes a situation where Washington is leverage for Philadelphia to be able to make D'Antoni the head coach. So like I said, that would probably be the least impactful circumstance for Jeremy Lin if D'Antoni becomes the Washington Wizards head coach. Now, as far as Jeremy is concerned, he's on a 2-year deal. The first year is just about to end. The second year is a player option, meaning he can, if he wants to just stay in Charlotte and stay on his current contract, he can do that. That's up to him. That's his decision. However, given that the salary cap is about to go way up, it's going to go up considerably this offseason, meaning there will be more money for contracts. I'm assuming, as I'm sure many Jeremy Lin fans are, that Jeremy's going to opt out of his contract. Even if he ended up staying with Charlotte, he just would be able to make more money. So it would probably make sense to opt out of the contract. If he opts out of his contract, and I don't remember what date that has to be done by, it might be like July 1st or something, then he's a free agent. So then if Mike D'Antoni signed on with one of these teams or became the head coach of them, then Jeremy could go and try to follow him. If Mike D'Antoni is made the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, then I think there's a very real chance that Jeremy could end up with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, they already have a point guard that they acquired in this past year, and that is Ish Smith. Ish Smith has played well for the team, and I know that at least one or two players on the team like Ish Smith, which means they like him as the point guard. However, Ish Smith is going to be a free agent this summer. He might get better offers. He might not want to stay in Philadelphia. So what needs to happen then is, if, for example, if Jeremy Lin was going to go to Philadelphia, then two things have to happen. Well, they don't have to happen, but it would make it optimal. One, Mike D'Antoni becomes a head coach, or there's a strong hint that he's going to become the head coach next summer, or no, during next year, even if it's not the start of next year. And that's number one. Number two is that Ish Smith goes somewhere else, or he does not re-sign with the Philadelphia 76ers. Then you've got a possibility that's, okay, here comes Jeremy. He can re-team with Mike D'Antoni, and he can be the starter. That would probably be ideal. Now, there's a lot of people that think, well, Philadelphia is not any good. Why would he want to go to a team like that? Well, the reason why Jerry Colangelo was brought in to the Sixers to advise them was because I think the league was getting a little bit I don't think they were thrilled with the way that Sam Hinkie was going about running the team, meaning the team was not competitive much of the time, and it seemed like they were tanking on purpose in order to use the lottery system to acquire more talent. So what I'm trying to say then is I don't think Philadelphia is going to be like that anymore. I think they're going to be a more competitive team starting next year. And so it's not like Jeremy's going to a team that only wants to win 10 games a year. I think they're going to start being more competitive starting next year. So it wouldn't be going to a terrible situation necessarily. Now, the second option that could happen is Mike D'Antoni becomes the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn, New York City, of course. Jeremy's got a huge fan base in New York City. They need a point guard. They have a couple guys on the roster. The starter for them was Jarrett Jack. Jarrett Jack tore his ACL ligament in one of his knees this past year. You would assume he's going to be out still for a while. You can come back from that injury, but usually it takes about 2 years to get all the way back. So you would assume that Jarrett Jack next year, even if he played, isn't going to be the same caliber during that season. I believe they also have Donald Sloan and Shane Larkin. Those players are good. They're good. I think Jeremy certainly can compete with both those players and do better than those players, I think, in certain regards. So if Mike D'Antoni ended up with Brooklyn, I do think there's a good chance that Jeremy Lin could end up following him. Now, Brooklyn hasn't been the winningest team in recent seasons, but they want to win. I think the owner, Prokhorov, will spend to win. And again, if Mike D'Antoni went there, then you have a compelling reason why Jeremy Lin could go there to be there and kind of trust Mike D'Antoni and trust the situation. So that's about it. Look, this is exciting stuff. As I tweeted out yesterday, this is the fourth time in 6 years Jeremy Lin has made the playoffs. He made it with the Knicks. He made it both years with the Rockets. Now he's made it with the Hornets. It's the third time he's actually going to play in the playoffs. He did not get to play the season with the Knicks because Jeremy tore his meniscus and I believe his left knee. So he wasn't able to perform in those playoffs. And this might be, he's never been on a team that's gone beyond the first round. So this might be a realistic chance for him to get to the second round, get to the conference semifinals. Of course, it's not going to be an easy task against Miami, but it's a good opportunity for Jeremy. I think it really is. These playoffs coming up, and we know he performed much better in his second playoffs than he did in his first. Hopefully he'll be able to use that experience to even greater advantage and greater success in the playoffs upcoming. Although, as I mentioned, it's not going to be easy against Hassan Whiteside and driving into the lane for layups probably in this series against the Miami Heat. I guess that's about it. Look, good to be back. I'm looking forward to the first round. Like I said, I definitely think I'm definitely confident Charlotte's capable of winning this series. This is not a series where they're going to be terribly overmatched. Yes, there's an edge with Miami because of the reasons that I mentioned, but Charlotte can compete with them. They're capable of beating this team. So I expect this to be a tough series. I respect Eric Spoelstra as a coach. He's gotten a lot of flack, and now he just rode LeBron's coattails. He's a good coach. He's a good coach. He's very details-oriented. The Heat will be prepared. It's going to be fun. This should be a lot of fun, but I do think that the Hornets have a very, very real chance to get something done and maybe even advance into the second round. So that is it for now. Thumbs up, thumbs down, your comments below. Hope you all are enjoyed the regular season as much as we did. I hope you're all excited for the playoffs to come. We'll put information in the video description so you can come and join the Conservative Media Facebook group if you'd like to do that, and also how you can come and follow us on Twitter as well. Once again, I'm PFE Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. Thanks a lot for watching Conservative Media. We strive to be the #1 Jeremy Lin YouTube fan channel. So today is Thursday, so we've got Fridays, Saturdays, 3 more days. until the first round begins for the Charlotte Hornets. However, there will be NBA playoff games taking place on Saturday, meaning that it's only 2 days until the playoffs actually officially begin, and there will be 4 games on Saturday and 4 games on Sunday. So if you're an NBA junkie like we are, this is the best time of the year. This is when it really gets serious, and we start to have a bunch of fun. So we'll be trying to keep touch and keep tabs with what's happening for the team and their updates and the little daily practices and their videos and stuff. And if we see anything, we'll try to share it with you, probably via Twitter. If there's anything really big comes up, then we'll make a video. But I expect there to be just a lot of preparations and kind of not too much big news coming out between now and Sunday and Game 1 between the Miami Heat and the Charlotte Hornets from Miami, Florida. Can't wait. Really excited to see what the Charlotte Hornets are going to be able to do. Hope you're having a great night, great day. Take care. We will talk to you again soon.